All right. So I believe we're recording now. So good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I appreciate you joining us for this week's Franchise Partner Spotlight. For those that don't know me, I think most everyone on this call I've had a chance to speak with. But for anyone that doesn't know me or maybe listening after the fact, my name is Wes Barefoot. I'm the Director of Franchise Development for ShelfGenie. The purpose of these webinars, we do one a week, and each week we invite a different one of our franchise partners on to share a little bit of their story and their experience for anyone that's interested, so that you can learn a little bit about their background, what they did prior to joining ShelfGenie, and they can share some of their experiences and what they've learned since becoming a ShelfGenie franchise owner. So typically what we do is I'll introduce the franchise partner that we have on this week, share a brief little bio on them, and then kind of turn it over to have them share a little bit of their story with you. I'll have some questions to kind of guide the conversation, but I will open it up throughout the call today for any questions that anyone that's joined us live may have. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce Alan Regala, who is our franchise partner in Seattle, Washington. Alan has been a franchise partner since 2010. So got about 9 years now, Alan.
Yep.
And he's had a great run. I'll try not to steal too much of his thunder here. You can kind of see the list of accolades that he's acquired over the years or accumulated over the years. And Alan's been very instrumental in, really helping the ShelfGenie organization continue to evolve over the years. He's been involved in our manufacturing committees, been very instrumental in helping us come up with new product ideas and product development. He's also been very instrumental in helping come up with some of the training material that's still used today to help train new franchise owners as well as new designers and installers, and also helped out with our Wish Portal system, which is our business management platform. So with that, Alan, I'd like to turn it over to you. And thanks again for taking some time to join us today. I know everyone's gonna hear a lot of great information from you, and maybe start out by just kind of briefly introducing yourself, sharing a little bit of your background prior to joining ShelfGenie, and then maybe just kind of give us a quick overview of what your experience has been since joining ShelfGenie.
Sure thing. Yeah. I'm glad to be here. So my background is well, immediately before this, I had my own business doing design and engineering consulting. My education has been in engineering, mechanical engineering. I have been designing and kind of doing engineering related things since about 2000. And I had my own business before creating my own products. So I love the creativity and the idea of being my own boss and, kind of guiding my own future, that sort of thing. And I did that for quite a while. It was really just me. I had some good success, nothing like crazy, but it was, I was making a pretty good living. We decided to move our family up to the Seattle area from the Bay Area in 2009. And that's when I, still doing my own thing because I could do it anywhere. And I kind of came to the crossroads and just was trying to decide between, go back to school, get like an MBA, or, start another business.
Yep.
And I really like the idea of, being my own boss, but I also like the idea of kind of having a partner. And so I was like, a franchise seems like it might make sense because you kind of have this built-in partner who has a game plan already and, built-in support, yet I'm still the owner of my own business and, I still can do that. So
Sure.
It's something bigger than just myself, which is what I had done before. So
Right.
That's kind of what got me looking into franchising or being in a franchise.
So how did you find ShelfGenie? Did you work with a franchise broker or consultant, or did you find ShelfGenie just through your own research, or how did that come about?
I did use a franchise consultant, and I think I just found it in through Entrepreneur Magazine or whatever. And and he helped me look at multiple options. I took a survey and I come up with a couple different businesses that I was interested in. ShelfGenie was actually last on my list, which is really interesting. I kind of liked the business model, but there's other ones that I thought would, maybe a little better. As I started exploring them, and then, I kind of weeded some out. And when I actually went and visited the companies, that's really when the decision was made.
Right.
I visited with a different company first in Florida. The people behind the scenes that were running at the home office, running the company, it just didn't really gel very well. And I was like, yeah, this is, it's okay. And it wasn't until like on my way home, I actually stopped by Atlanta because it wasn't a planned trip. And I actually met with the CEO and the other folks behind the scenes at ShelfGenie.
Right.
And I was, immediately gelled with everybody. And it was like, okay, this is a fit from a person, people standpoint.
Yep.
And it's just been a really great fit, since.
So yeah, that's I think pretty similar to a lot of the folks on the call, working maybe with a franchise consultant. Not everyone though. So that's interesting to hear. It's on the screen here, Rookie of the Year 2011, Franchisee of the Year 2013, numerous sales award. Clearly you've had some success. So maybe talk a little bit about, what you would attribute some of that success to. I think one of the things that, most people looking into a franchise, including ShelfGenie, are really trying to figure out is, number one, what are kind of the key qualities that a franchisee may need to possess to be successful, and what does the blueprint, kind of look like to get to that point. So maybe just share kind of broadly, what are some of the best practices that you've identified and been able to incorporate in your business to achieve the success that you have thus far?
Yeah. So, my attitude has always been, this is my business. I'm going to do what I need to do to make it work. And my attitude's it's always asking the question, how can I, with whatever it is. So, it's being a problem solver and figuring out what I need to do to make it successful, versus, I know it's a franchise. Obviously it's got a system in place and all those things, but people are going to run into different issues, regardless of, the systems that are in place. And it's like trying to figure it out in your own market and make sure it works for you. And you get the training from the home office, but there's still lots to learn. It's like you're drinking from a fire hose, and there's just a lot of learning while you're kind of getting things moving. So it's not being afraid to ask questions, not being afraid to ask for help, and just being, accountable to yourself to do what needs to happen. Acknowledge reality and do what needs to happen to make things work, versus waiting for somebody else to make you successful.
Right.
I'd say that's been most of the key. And I mean, to this day, I certainly, there was the system is today is so much different than it was before. Like there's so many better things in place now as far as the training goes and all that. And that was something that, we had to do a lot more on our own back then. But even now today, so you guys are coming in at a great time. But even now to this day, I still am in that same mindset for, things that I want to achieve. Like, how am I going to be able to get these things done, and still being aggressive about it versus just kind of being like, oh yeah, it's great, I'll just kind of sit back and relax now.
You're still kind of pushing the envelope and thinking outside of the box. And I was actually on a call with John Womack, who's with us here today, right before this, and it kind of came up. He was making a comment. It's interesting how it seems like in any franchise organization, so many franchisees are not successful or not as successful because for whatever reason they don't follow the system or the model that's kind of laid out. And I agreed 100% with John on that, but I also kind of said, look, I think that, one thing you should be evaluating is within a model, there should still be some autonomy for the franchisees to, think outside of the box, apply their own style or their own approach to the business. And that's how, ShelfGenie, I know, has been able to, evolve as an organization. A lot of great new ideas and new concepts and new approaches have come from, our franchisees that are out there, working on this business every single day. So I think that's a very valid point, that there is a model and you should leverage that and all of the resources that come with it. But, there's nothing wrong with kind of thinking about it your own way. Everyone's got different backgrounds and different experiences and can bring kind of different approaches to the table. So I think, in my slightly biased opinion, I think ShelfGenie, has that. It's kind of a fine line, but I think we do have that. So you came in 2010. Do you remember how many franchisees there were when you joined the system?
I want to say there, I don't know, maybe around 30, I want to say.
Okay.
No. Sorry. Was that locations?
That's probably territories back then.
Territories. Yeah, I don't think there was that many people. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it was a much smaller organization. And like you said, we've evolved a lot over the years. So the training and support has been built out a lot more than it was at that time. Maybe talk a little bit, and I know it's been a little while for you, but what did the first couple of months, 6 months, first year, while you were really trying to kind of ramp your business up, from what you can recall, what did that kind of look like? What were some of the biggest things that you were focusing on, as a new franchise owner, in those first, 6 months to a year of being in business?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of learning by doing, and for me, the beginning is intentional to be, I kickstarted it off with a home show. So that was like my first, official marketing that I did, and which was great to get exposure and actually, talk to people and work with this new design team who had not done any design work at all. As I had some new people I just hired that were, in my booth, and these new installers I were at training during that home show. It was all super new.
Trial by fire.
Yeah, exactly. Trial by fire. But, I used that opportunity we're going to learn from this experience, from talking to people, from doing appointments and doing some installations and whatnot. But I was not, my intent was not to just start from those first couple of months to just blow it out of the water. I wanted to just learn, and then figure some things out. So by the time the next year rolled around, that started in October. So I gave myself a couple of months to really learn things. And then really more in January, in February, when the other shows started coming in and I was doing a lot more marketing, I felt a little bit more prepared. So the timing just happened to work out that way. So it was good. People are starting at different times, so you kind of have whatever you're dealing with. But it's actually nicer, I think, to start off when it's not super crazy. So I got some appointments to learn from, but I'm not wasting a lot.
Right. Yeah.
And then I can head into the shows the next season really strong, and I'm still learning, obviously, and so the learning never stops. To this day, you just get better at things and more experience.
Yeah. So, how did you go about recruiting the initial members of your team? I think that's something a lot of people, that are going through this process with me have questions about, and I really try to emphasize the importance of, as a franchise owner, recruiting, training, and mentoring a team of designers and installers. And I mean, you've done a great job with that over the years. You have a fantastic team in place. So how did that come about? And what have you learned over the years in terms of maybe some best practices for, recruiting designers and installers?
Yeah, it really is the most important part of the business. Is your your biggest asset is the team. And that was probably, I'd say, that my biggest weakness coming into this all was that my background, I never had to hire anybody, I never had to fire anybody and manage people really.
Right.
When I was my own business, I'd manage vendors, but I wasn't having to hire people that weren't on a payroll or anything like that. So that was the biggest struggle for me was how to kind of identify good people, and be selective. And so the things that I've learned over time have, I'm definitely hiring in a different way than I did before. At the beginning, it was like Craigslist. While I was at training, in Atlanta, I posted an ad for like installers. That's how I found my first installers. And so in designers as well, Craigslist was my biggest thing. Since then, I went for a number of years, actually, pretty good installers and a mix, actually, a good installer, some not so great. And then designers, I'd say most of the designers I hired actually at the beginning for years were really not great. And they were kind of excited about it. And I was just excited to have people that were excited about it.
Right.
But performance-wise, they really weren't great. And it just relative to what I would be doing. And so it was like, oh, in my own head, maybe it was just, well, I'm the owner, maybe I'm just, and it wasn't until, I don't know, 4 years ago or so that it was like, I had one really good design and I was like, oh, that's what that looks like. And, I see what's nice about the franchise system is you can see what other people are doing in the system. And I'm like, gosh, as a whole, we're really not doing great from a revenue per appointment standpoint compared to these other areas of the country. Why are they beating us in that? We may be generating more revenue, but we should be beating them on those numbers. Like, why is that?
Yeah.
And I just didn't realize that I was like, I just didn't have the right people. Like, they exist out there. And so it's been really interesting to learn from that experience, and that designer is still with me today, but trying to find more of her. So how do I find more of that? How do I become better at hiring solid people, identifying those people, recruiting them, and then bringing them on? And there's no, I think, perfect science to it, but you can there's some amount of numbers that you just have to, put things out there and then try, because you're still not going to be 100%. I guess it's going to be the best, but I'm getting better at it. And then the other thing I'm getting better at is just more recruiting, like constantly looking, not just, in the beginning you're kind of in desperation mode. Like, I just, you got a pulse, like, come on board, which is not where you want to be.
Yeah. What I think identifying when it's time to expand your team. I know in our franchise, we kind of learned the hard way where we weren't planning to need a second installer as quickly as we did. Not a bad problem to have, but at the same time, it kind of put us behind the 8 ball because we were more desperate than we should have been when trying to recruit that second installer. And it ended up not being a good fit. And we have a great second installer now, but we were kind of hiring from a place of desperation, and that's not where you want to be. So I think kind of learning to anticipate, when is the right time to start recruiting more designers or another installer or whatever the case may be is important. So what are some of the qualities that you've identified that result in a great designer and someone that's going to be a good long-term fit for your team?
Yeah. Look, I just want to, after I answer this question, I want to answer a question Lauren chatted with me about. She has a question. So I'll answer that after I answer your question, okay?
Yep. Sorry,
so as far as qualities go for designers and installers, with designers, there's, two kind of main things. I think one is really a passion for what it is that we do. So, when in talking to people and they just see what we do, like we show them our magazine or they look at our website and they just are like, wow, this is amazing. Like, I love this. And they have that sense of like organization. They love being organized. They love, that's the part of it where the passion comes from.
Yeah.
Someone who's really passionate about having organized spaces and things that are accessible and they look nice and, and helping others, of course. And then the other part of it, which, it's not, is in an ideal world is someone who just connects really well with other people. And so when I say from the sales standpoint, they don't have, like, my top person that I brought in didn't actually have formal sales experience.
Yeah.
But she's had her own business. I mean, she just would never call it sales, but she connects really well with people. She's just outgoing. I mean, she can just communicate with someone and connect with them well enough and be able to have a good, communicate well enough to, show value in what she does. And that from the sales side of things, like having that aspect, if you can combine those two things, someone who's passionate about what we do, combined with really being able to connect really well with people and be persuasive at the end of the day, or be an influencer, those are great qualities that work together for a designer.
Yeah, and that's a very common theme that I hear from other owners is you're more hiring for kind of attitude and personality, and you can train them on the technical side and the sales side.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. So yeah, go ahead and ask Lauren's question, and then I will open it up for questions that anyone else may have. But yeah, go ahead. I didn't see the chat come through, so maybe read the question so everyone.
Yeah. So yeah, her question is, why did you opt out of being your own designer, considering your background? It's a great question, and I will tell you that I still do design appointments. So first of all, it really is about building a team. In my grand plan for our area, there's no way I'd be able to do all the appointments, nor would I want to do all the appointments. For me, it's about creating a great team that I can leverage others to help me kind of, as far as what I want to have at the end of the day in my kind of lifestyle. And which is why I got out of doing what I did before, which was just, just being me. So here I can have the opportunity to have a great team of people that I can lead. The design part I still love, and I still do design work. So my goal, which I haven't quite hit yet, I'm getting there though, is for myself to just do appointments when I want to do appointments, like one a week. I would still probably do it because I do enjoy it. I meet with people. I'm really good at it. And it keeps me kind of in the game. So I can still, if there's new things to test out or new things to whatever, I can kind of still do that for my team and really empathize with my team. And they appreciate that. And it helps with the training and all that. But it's still, it's still that work in progress where I am still looking to bring on really good people. I'm in training right now with a really designer who has really great potential. So, it's not something that I don't do. There's a lot of folks in the system who choose not to do it. And I think that's great. And there's a lot of people that still like to do it. And that's the nice thing about being the owner. And if you have a great team, you have options. So I still do choose to do it. Maybe a little more than I want to, but I'm getting there.
Yeah, and maybe, and this is my fault for not clarifying it earlier, but maybe share with everyone kind of how your territories are laid out, number of territories that you have, and just kind of the size of the market. Because you made a good point. I mean, you're in a pretty big market with tons of potential. No way one person could develop it to its full potential.
Yeah, I have 5 territories. We cover, for those of you who Washington, Olympia up to the border, which is, that's, I don't know, 3-4 hour, drive. It's a big area, and I have a team of 4 installers, and I think I'm at 6 or maybe 7 designers right now. None of them are full-time. But it's a pretty good sized team, and and I'm still looking to hire more. It's what's really nice actually, being on the side of over hiring, which I've never really been on that side. I was on there for briefly, but I hired 2 people at one time, and I was like, I don't know if I need both of them, but I hired them both anyways, because I felt like they were both good quality people.
Yeah.
And one of them opted out during training. I was like, wow, I'm really glad I hired 2 people.
Glad I hired the second one. Yeah.
Yeah. And as independent contractors, it was, because you just don't know. I mean, you can interview people to death, but until they're out and actually like trying it and you can kind of get to know them a bit more, it's really hard to say whether or not it's going to work out.
Yeah. So Joe had a question, and Joe's based in California. His question is, does Washington State require a contractor's license? And if so, how did you navigate that? And I think you've already answered the second question, is which are they, W-2 or independent contractors? So I think everyone on your team, except for you do have one person that's more of like a full-time position on your team, right?
Correct. Yeah. Everyone's an independent contractor, with the exception of one person who is my operations and marketing manager, Noelle. She's fantastic. She helps with all the events. She's coordinating all the events and running the events, hiring people, managing the people at the events that we do. And then she does a lot of the operations stuff, like reviewing designs, making sure jobs are moving forward, stuff like that. It's like, yeah, she's awesome.
Yeah.
That's easy.
Um,
Um,
I wanna talk more about the role you have her in a minute, but maybe
okay.
speak to the contractor's license. I don't know
Yeah.
if it applies
So
in Washington or not.
in Washington, does let's see, I have a general contractor's license. So to hire subs, you're technically supposed to have a general contractor's license. For us, our requirements in getting that license are not very difficult. So there's not really an issue for
So
me here. I
were
think
you
in
able to?
California, I've heard other issues, or there's different timing of things and how you get that. It's all a little different.
Yeah.
Um,
So you
yeah.
were able to take the exam to get your GC license just based on your previous work experience,
I mean, honestly, here I
or
was
is there
actually
even an
surprised. I
exam?
think there was no like test or anything like that really for us here.
Yeah. So it's different in different states, and Joe and I talked a little bit about that yesterday. And in California, you don't need a general contractor's license for the business that ShelfGenie is involved in. You do need a contractor's license, but and Joe, like we talked about yesterday, there are some different options that you and I can explore in more detail offline. But so that's a good question. Thanks for asking that. And then TJ. So TJ's in the Phoenix, Scottsdale, Arizona area. He's seen your YouTube video of your display, which is very cool and very informative. So he's just asking about how you update the home show display, and any idea kind of what your all-in investment into that display would be.
Yeah, as far as frequency of updating, it just kind of depends on how long it lasts. Like, how long the booth like looks okay, and then if we have new products and other things to add to it. We just revamped it. We had it beginning of last year. I think was the first year we started using this display, and the previous one, the previous booth we put together was like 3 or 4 years earlier. So, and we still have that as our second booth because we have two booths now. And we had a previous booth before that. So we're on our third booth right now, our third display. And as far as, costs go, I think, honestly, I can't remember exactly how much this one, I could look it up, but um, I'm guessing it was around 10K or something like that. Uh, 8, 10, somewhere in that neighborhood. I think part of it has to do with how you can partner with other folks. So we partnered with a cabinet company to make the cabinets,
Yep.
and in exchange for um, sending referral work to them and telling people if they're looking for cabinets at these events, they'd make pretty amazing cabinets. So that worked out well. Worked with a countertop company to do the countertops, and so those parts were kind of already set for us, which is great.
That's smart. Yeah, that's smart. And we did something similar with the cabinet company that did our cabinets, and we actually put a little sign of theirs up on our cabinets. So if someone sees us at a show and likes the cabinets, we can refer them out. So that's a good recommendation, and a way you can probably save a little bit of money. But and on that note, well, first I can circle back to this. Let me unmute everyone real quick and just see if there's any other questions, because these poor folks have to spend a lot of time listening to me talk. So I'm gonna think everyone's unmuted now. So the lines are open. Thanks for the great questions that we've had. Does anyone have other questions for Alan at this point?
There's one more in the chat here. I don't know if you saw that.
Okay, sorry, it's covered up on my screen, so I'm not seeing them when they come through. So Joe's question is, that's a good question, Joe. Did you start with multiple territories, Alan? And if not, have you added territory over time, or how did you kind of get to the 5 territories that you have today?
Yeah, I started with 3,
Okay.
and then added a fourth. I don't know, with like it was like a year later or something like that, maybe a year and a half, and then I added the 5th just a couple years ago. So it's gotten bigger over time, but for me, the main thing is I want to, I just don't want to share. So I'm like, I want to own this area, and I want to really, really own it. And I don't want to have to deal with, I don't know, coordinating with someone else for marketing and all the other things.
Sure.
Um, and so that's just me, just because I'm aggressive with that.
Yeah. Well, and it makes sense. I mean, you've got clearly a very good business in place and a very good foundation. So, the way the ShelfGenie model's laid out, it's relatively easy to add territory and expand when the time is right. So, that makes sense. Good question, Joe. Any other questions?
Can I just add to that real
Sure.
quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, the amazing thing about the business model, and it's really interesting, in meeting with other business owners that have more traditional types of businesses, just how easy it is to expand. And I mean, easy in the way that it's so low overhead, like you don't need to have a brick and mortar store or anything like that. Like I need to get an installer and a designer or someone who can do both in that area.
Right.
And then I'm kind of there.
Yeah. Yeah, and figure out how to drive leads, and that's kind of where I wanted to take the conversation next, was to focus a little bit on marketing, and I think this is a topic that most people are interested in hearing more about, and this may kind of spark some other questions from the group, but talk to us a little bit about what your marketing strategy looks like today, and if it has changed and evolved over the years, which I imagine it has, kind of what that's looked like. And then through that, I want to maybe circle back a little bit to Noelle, who you mentioned earlier, who's your operations and marketing coordinator, because she's plays a unique role in your business, I know, and not a role that every other franchise owner has in their business. So maybe explain to us just a little bit how you're driving leads, where you're getting your business from today, and kind of break that down for us, if you don't mind.
Sure. So usually, like every year, I boil it all down. Which portal our online kind of database has a good way of making reports, and I always boil it down to like, okay, what are my top, marketing sources, and home shows or events, I'll say, are number one for us, and that's like probably 40 to 50% of what we produce is from home shows. And events. I say events now because home shows are a part of it, but we also do fairs, street festivals, basically anything in person where we can get in front of people. Can work really well. What we do is very visual, and it just when you can get in front of people and show them, they go, oh yeah, that makes sense. So that's the first thing. We're always looking to do more, expand and do as many more events if we can. The next couple things are like direct mail, all the little mailers, RSVP and Valpak and whatever else, where we can get into homes. And there's it's a very small percentage that end up contacting us, but just ends up working out. We track our ROI pretty well, so they're not all created equal, but they all help each other.
You find you get pretty decent ROI on the direct mail that you do? I know in our market, Valpak is one of our best performing marketing vehicles out of everything we do. And a lot of people are surprised to hear that, you can, in some cases, get a really good ROI from something like direct mail these days. But so I figured you did. So that's surprising, I think, to some people. But if you think about kind of the demographic that we're largely trying to target, it's still pretty relevant with some of those groups.
Yeah. And what's really interesting is that different pieces work differently in different markets.
Yeah.
And so Valpak for you may not work for somebody in another place, and then something that works for them that might not work for you. So even within our market here, I don't do Valpak everywhere. I do Valpak in the areas where there's fewer options for marketing, because I've done Valpak in the areas that are when I first started, I just did them everywhere and just to see what's going to work. And there's just so many more options, like in Seattle itself, that a lot of people they're like, oh, junk mail gets in the trash, versus a place that's like 2 hours north of me where there's fewer things like that. People actually open them up and they actually look at them and they call. So that's where tweaking those types of things to figure out how can I achieve a good ROI is important to analyze those types of things.
Yeah. Good.
So direct mail, newspaper. We still do have great relationship with Seattle Times here on a paper lead campaign, paper lead arrangement. We do, a lot of stuff now comes in that says internet. It's still uncertain. I always question, anything that comes in internet, if people are actually searching for organizational solutions for the cabinets, or are they coming from the newspaper or something else? And we just don't know it.
Right.
So that bucket keeps getting bigger. We do, TV is a relatively small part of our revenue. But we do happen to have this one show, the morning show that we go on every month, every other month, and it does cool. Well overall. And then the referrals. We have a great relationship with California Closets, and a handful of other, like organizers and other folks that help us out. And that's an area we certainly want to expand. And I think it's definitely gotten bigger over time, and an area where everyone would love to have continue to get bigger, and even, it'd be great if we could all do referral business.
Absolutely. Yeah. So maybe talk a little bit more about the shows and events that you do. You said it's probably roughly 40 to 50% of your business. And, for anyone on the call that doesn't know, Alan is certainly one of the highest volume franchise owners that we have. So 40 to 50% of your total revenue is no small amount. So talk a little bit about what your strategy is in doing these shows, finding these shows, how Noelle plays into that, and just kind of what you've been able to do with that portion of your marketing strategy, because I think there's a lot that people can learn from how you've approached that.
Yeah. So, we started just, looking for whatever, Google, home shows or whatever in our area to find kind of the bigger events. And the key, one of the keys is really it's networking with fellow companies, booth neighbors, and such. And Noelle has just done an outstanding job with that, and to really figure, especially those that have been around much longer than us, like what events do they do? At one point, we met with, we had lunch with the bath fitter, their marketing manager person, and he's like, yeah, we do like, what is it, like 300 events a year.
Yeah.
We're like, okay, well, we've got like 12.
What are we missing here?
It gives you just like, it gives you that perspective that, wow, there is a lot of opportunity out there. Now, granted, these may be small events. A lot of them may be little tiny events or whatever, and they're often random places, but there's just a lot out there. And like we're in the 30s right now. And so, and we cover the big ones primarily, but there's a ton out there that some we know about that we just haven't tried yet. Some that there's lots that we don't know about, I'm sure. And they're not all going to necessarily be a good fit for us.
Right.
But what we did, we kind of asked people that are somewhat similar, home improvement or whatever. And we tried, a lot of these events, they're not, the smaller ones especially, are not that expensive.
Yeah.
And if at the end of the day, you get a 5 ROI or a 10 ROI, it makes it all worth it. And I'll say that the key to this, though, and this is the reason why most other franchisees don't do as many events, is that the key is to not be the one doing the events.
I was going to ask you, I know you're not going to 30 plus shows a year.
Right.
So yeah, talk a little bit about how you have that set up.
So So Noelle this is like this was the reason she was brought on board initially, because I actually found her while looking for someone to help in the booth, during my first
Hmm.
shows that I did, and she
Yep.
just Craigslist, she responded, um, and so she started working in the events and still works in the events for me today. She just loves it, and she does multiple things, which I think is nice to have the variety, but she
Yeah.
really does like engaging with people, and she's just really great at it. Represents us really well, and she's the one who goes out and works at these events, or brings in other people to help work the events, or if there's overlapping events, have someone do one over here while she's over here, and coordinates that. And that's, I mean, really what allows us to do so many events, because I would not be able to do it. I mean, I obviously did a lot of events at the beginning, but I don't go to the events anymore. Basically, I stop by if it's at a fair or something and I'm bringing the family or
Right.
whatnot, or if there's a seminar and I'm going to speak at the seminar. Um, but having someone who can, that's reliable, that can help run events and actually be there, um, makes a big difference.
Yeah, no, that's huge. I mean, I know we just Kelly and I went through our first home show season in the spring, and we were out there, working every hour of every show because we wanted to be involved this first go round. But we're definitely putting the pieces in place so that we can do more and be a little more hands off with it going forward.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's a great strategy, and I know it's paying off for you. We don't have to get too deep into some of the metrics and stuff, but most of the folks on the call have had the chance to kind of understand kind of some of the metrics that we look at in the business, cost per appointment and ROI, being a couple of those. How do you feel that, this focus on shows and events has impacted your cost per appointment and ultimately your ROI that you're getting from the investment?
Yeah, it's certainly the one of the best ROI, marketing options that we have, and it helps, um, it helps bring the overall ROI into a better place when you're doing a lot of expensive things like newspaper and
Yeah.
direct mail, which are all definitely more expensive.
Yeah.
Um, but it does range, depending on the event. But again, um, we got some events that are, it's a 10 ROI or better, and we've got some that are, a 5 ROI, which is still pretty good.
Yeah.
Um, but again, because of some of the smaller events where it literally takes one sale to get a good ROI, sometimes on like a day, an event that's just half a day or a
Yeah.
day.
$150, couple $100 to show up and do the event.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you don't need a whole lot from that to have a spectacular ROI. Um, so you feel like overall this kind of, focus on doing more shows and events and having a strategic approach to doing it has had a positive impact on your overall ROI from your marketing investment?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're doing a couple things because you're getting just in front of people. Again, our product's very visual, and so you're getting out there into the community. People can see you, but you're also just going to be smart about it and look at the numbers and do what makes sense. So if no one's going to the show, then don't do it. Maybe
Yeah.
that's probably a good thing to look and learn. But if you've got traffic, maybe it's, oh, you're not in a great location. How about where's the better location to be next time? And how can you talk to the event person to get into a better spot? And,
Yep.
looking at all those things, talking to your neighbors, where's the good spot? What are the good shows? Those are the things that you kind of need to do to really make, to expand that area, make it work.
That's a great recommendation because some of these shows can be hard to find. I mean, it's not like you can always just do a Google search and get a master list of all the different shows and events that might make sense to be at. You have to kind of network and, get involved in other companies that are doing these show circuits. And so I think that's a great recommendation. So a lot of good information shared here. I do want to make sure if anyone else has questions that they would like to ask Alan. We've got about a little over 10 minutes left. I told Alan we'd keep this to an hour. So And I think I've got most people unmuted here. So if anyone does have questions or anything they'd like to hear Alan, talk a little bit more too, feel free to go ahead and jump in. And if you want to use the chat box, that's fine. Or I think I've got everyone unmuted. So fire away.
Hi, this is Lauren from Pennsylvania. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Lauren.
Hi, I was wondering what your lead time to profitability was.
For me, it's a good question. It's really interesting because of the nature of the overhead being so low. Pretty much, once I paid for my booth, as far as cash flow goes, that things kind of started working right away with the home show I did. I got in enough leads and things started just like positive cash flow somewhat from the beginning, even though it's small. But my first year, I ended up paying for pretty much all my expenses from after the first year, my first year in business, which I don't think is necessarily normal. I don't know. It's just kind of what I experienced. But the, the marketing that I chose to do and just doing enough shows and making sales right away, it just allowed me to kind of be, profitable pretty quickly.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, that's a good question, and one that I'm sure is on most people's mind as they're, going through a process like this. I mean, it's kind of one of the $1 million questions, and so it's a great way to get answers to that questions because Alan's able to share his experience. Different franchise owners will have different experiences in that. So, Lauren, as part of this process, as you work through with me, you'll have the opportunity once we get to the appropriate point for you to reach out and have one-on-one conversations with any of our franchise owners, and including Alan. And that's a great way to get answers to those type of questions. So it's a good question, and thanks, Alan, for sharing kind of what your experience was related to that. But I would echo, I mean, for us in our experience, cash flow happened very quickly. We had a couple of pretty good designers that were able to convert appointments into sales, right off the bat. And if you're able to do that, you can get the cash coming in pretty quickly, largely due to the low overhead nature of the model and also how we buy product from our manufacturing plant and so forth. So good question. Anything else for Alan? Check and make sure there's nothing in the chat box. So, as we wrap up here, Alan, and if you're okay with it, I'll make sure the folks on the call have your contact information and know how to get in touch with you, when they are at the appropriate point to start having some one-on-one conversations. But, what advice would you give to anyone? Because you were in this position and it's been, 9 or so years, but you were kind of on that side of the table at one point. So, what advice would you give to someone that's, kind of exploring ShelfGenie or any other, franchise for that matter, as a possible opportunity? What are some things that you might be able to recommend to someone? Because it is a huge decision, obviously, and one that shouldn't be taken lightly. So what might you share with some of the folks that have joined us today?
Yeah, I'd say, you got to do your homework, of course, which you guys are all doing. Find something that I think you're really excited about. I think is ideal because it's the beginning, especially. It's a lot of time and energy and effort involved. So make sure that's something that you're really excited about, and you can be on a daily basis to get through it. Just in whatever you do, you really do have to have this kind of problem solver mindset about how you can make things work. Whether you do this with ShelfGenie or any other business franchise or whatnot, and just be prepared to, ask for help and do what you need to do to make it successful.
What would you say, based on what what would you say are some of the key qualities or skill sets that someone should have if they're going to be successful in a business like ShelfGenie?
The mindset is really important. Having the right mindset, like I said, having kind of a how can I attitude, being positive about it. I think for someone, it's just, I think with any business, I guess with a franchise, you can kind of, you can be successful, following the, just following the system. I think to really kill it and make it, great, especially in this kind of business where it's not like as, I don't know, like a shop where you're doing the same thing over and over and over again. And you get people. Yeah. This is something that there's a bit more kind of fluidity to it. And it's a little bit more, maybe a little bit more complexity to it. So, I think just having that mindset to really be engaged and willing to get that help that you need, have a good attitude about it, and do what you need to do to make it successful versus waiting for somebody else to make it successful for you.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a really good point. And that applies to ShelfGenie or any business that someone may own, franchise or non-franchise, I think. And, Andy, our CEO, and he's a longtime franchise partner himself. I hear him say all the time, don't suffer in silence. Don't be afraid to raise your hand and ask for help. And, one of the things I do feel very strongly that ShelfGenie does a great job of is, in addition to all the support that's there from the home office for, our franchise partners and their teams, there's a fantastic network of other franchise owners like Alan that have been doing this for a long time and have a ton of insight and knowledge that they've learned, and they're all willing to help. I mean, we survey our franchise owners every year to find out what we're doing well, what we're not doing as well in, and overwhelmingly one of the areas we score best in is just kind of the community of franchise owners and how willing everyone is to help with each other. And so, I think that's number one, something that anyone that's considering getting involved in a franchise should be evaluating is, in addition to how's the franchisor going to support me, what's that peer network like of other franchisees and what's the culture like there? And then don't be afraid to tap into it. You've got this peer network that you can really leverage to help you learn, especially coming in as a new franchisee. So
Wes, can I make one more comment?
Please do. Yeah.
Quick story. So, and I'm not sure if I told you about this. I'm pretty sure but so a couple years into this, I was like, oh, ShelfGenie is doing pretty great. Like, I'm going to start another business. So I actually bought into another business again, multiple territory franchisee. And I don't know if for those of you familiar with Menchie's, so frozen yogurt. So I was like, amped up. I'm going to do another business. This one's going really well. I can, do another one at the same time. And what was really interesting about that process is, I did the 3 territory thing again, where I'm going to potentially open, 3 stores was the idea. Went through the process of, training, looking for locations and all that. And just what was really interesting, how different the company is. Obviously they're very different companies, but just as far as just seeing differences in culture, how the franchisees kind of communicated with each other and kind of what that sense of community was and what the relationship was between the franchisees and the franchisor. And it honestly gave me such great appreciation for ShelfGenie and how unique and simple and effective the business model is, how the people at the home office actually care and listen, and you can have a direct relationship with those people. It doesn't feel like you're kind of like this cog in a wheel. The size of that other company was much larger by the time, as far as number of franchisees versus where ShelfGenie was, even though they had started after ShelfGenie. Sure. So they'd grown very quickly. But it was just amazing to me to see, all these things. And I was just like, well, what's going on? I'm not getting that support that I got, I'm getting at ShelfGenie. And at the end of the day, I ended up pulling out. We were very close to opening a store. I was working with the landlord to finalize a lease, and it didn't work out because the landlord was kind of crazy. But it worked out great for me because like at the end of the day, we end up even though we lost a lot of money, we saved a lot more money by not opening that store.
Yeah.
In hindsight, than we would have lost moving forward with the store. And we saw a bunch of things behind the scenes with the franchisor that we were like, oh, this is just doesn't feel right. Let's just back out and not do this.
Well, I think they got in some trouble for selling a bunch of franchise licenses that never opened or saw the light of day, but it's a good story. And I'd heard it, I think secondhand. I don't think I've heard you tell the story. So I'd love to hear more about that experience at some point, because I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to things like that. But no, that's a good story. And I'm glad you shared it. And, obviously you and I are a bit biased here, but I think, for those on the call joining us, go through the process, talk to other franchise owners. I think, you'll hear a lot of common themes, but one of them certainly being, the culture and the sense of community that we do have here at ShelfGenie. I've been involved in other franchise organizations. It's a hard thing to find. So anyways, Alan, thanks again, man. This has been really good. I appreciate you taking time out of your day. I know you're busy to share with us. So for those of you that have been working with me through this process and are at the appropriate point in the process to talk one-on-one to some owners, if you don't already have Alan's contact information, let me know and I can get it for you. And I'm sure he's willing to find a time to talk with you one-on-one if you'd like to pick his brain a little more. For those that are maybe not quite at that point in the process, you'll get there. There's a couple of steps that we need to accomplish, but you'll have the opportunity to talk with Alan and any of our other franchise owners one-on-one. So really appreciate it. Thanks everyone that joined us. I hope this was helpful and good information that was shared. Last question, Alan. This is one I ask everyone, and I don't know if you're a reader or not, but if you are, what book are you reading right now?
It's a great question. I am a reader. I'm an Audible guy.
Okay.
I'm always listening to something. I know you and I have talked about books a lot in the past, at least in the last conference. But
yeah,
I'll tell you the last book I read.
Braving like Twilight or something right now, are you?
No. It's not. It's very interesting. It's actually, so I'm all about self-awareness and self-improvement.
Yeah.
I have 2 young girls, so I'm actually reading a book called Girls on the Edge.
There you go. All right.
So it's about some things, but the previous book I read, and it's actually very good for those of you with young kids, young girls, but Braving the Wilderness by Brene Brown.
Yeah, I've heard of that. I haven't read it yet. It's good.
Excellent book on vulnerability and kind of putting yourself out there, being out there on your own, and yeah,
she's good. I've heard her TED talk, and she's got a Netflix show now. I think I haven't watched it, or a Netflix special or something, but her stuff's pretty good. Her message and content is good. And I have a 2-year-old daughter, so I'll Girls on Edge. I probably need to read that because she's like 2 going on 15. So sounds like one I need to queue up for my next read. So, all right, well, I'll let you go. Thanks for that, man. Really appreciate it. Looking forward to seeing you here in about a month or so at conference. Yep. And thanks to everyone that joined us today. We will be sending the recording around, and I'm always here if anyone has any questions or needs any help from me. All right, thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of the day and a great rest of your week.
All right, take care, everyone. Good luck.
Thanks, Wes. Thanks, Alan.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.